Hey, good evening. This is Greg Mackay here with DTV. Thanks for tuning in tonight. Like I said, I'm Greg Mackay. I'm a former election commissioner, election administrator. I ran for state representative last year as a Democrat. Now I'm a real estate broker, and glad to be here, and I'm glad that you're watching tonight, and a lifelong Democrat, I should add. So I'm glad to be here, glad you're watching tonight. We've got two great folks here tonight, Rick Staples and Gloria Johnson, and you're going to get an opportunity to hear them talk about the session that just ended, and maybe we'll get a chance to talk about what we'd like to do in the future. So, Gloria, or we can start with Rick.
All right. Well, let's start with Rick.
So I can't. I don't even know.
I think Rick probably has a couple of bills he'd like to highlight.
Yes, Rick.
Well, I think the most important, a lot of people like to talk about the sports betting, which was historic, but I think the most important piece of legislation for me personally that I was able to pass is to get the General Assembly to recognize teenage suicide and suicide attempts as at crisis level at the state of Tennessee. Everything that's negative is affecting our children. It's at record levels. We have more children living on the street. We have more runaways. We have obviously more children trying to take their lives, and we have violent crimes amongst young people increasing. And we have also, unfortunately, more young people abusing substances. So we have a lot of fights going on, but we're missing the fact that we're losing a lot of our kids across the state. And unfortunately, we have a lot of distractions going on in Nashville that's taken away from our future, which is our children. So for me personally, that piece of legislation and the Juwan Latham Act were my two most significant pieces of legislation. So I'm glad one took 2 years to get funded, and I had to work for a year just to get that teenage suicide and suicide attempts.
Well, good. Well, I would hope everybody would agree that the children should be the focus of state government.
Well, when a Democrat's pushing it, it takes a year to 2 months to get everybody to agree.
And the point about that is we are the ones who are pushing that kind of legislation that actually benefits the families in our districts and across the state. And so I think that's important to look at when you see that we were the ones that were pushing for Medicaid expansion. I carried the bill to try and pass Medicaid expansion, but unfortunately our legislature was, head over heels after this block grant bill, which is a disaster. And we just heard the Washington Post yesterday felt the need to have their editorial board talk about what a horrible decision Tennessee has made. And what people don't realize is this doesn't add any more care to what we're doing with TennCare. It actually is going to cut the care that we're giving now, whereas Medicaid expansion would expand to the 300,000 Tennesseans that need it. It would save our rural hospitals. It would we could treat, like Ohio is treating 96% of their folks with opiate issues because they expanded Medicaid. Tennessee's only treating 11%. That's not where we need to be, and this legislation is not going to help that. We know for a fact it's going to cut what we're getting.
And I've heard a lot of people say, Gloria, that perhaps more cynical than us, that it's just a delaying tactic on the part of the Republicans to get them through the next election, because we all know it's going to get thrown out in court. The block grants are illegal. They just can't do it that way.
Well, and what we saw this in 2016, if you remember. They did that 3-star, they put this group together that was going to explore the 3-star health program. And what they wanted to do was put in, well, we're going to treat mental health and we'll treat veterans. But they knew that the way the ACA was set up, you couldn't take out particular groups to serve and not serve others.
Serve them all.
And they knew that, but they used that to get them through the elections in 2016. They're going to use block grants to pretend like they're doing something to get them through 2020. And people need to understand that's all it is. It's a delay tactic.
Yeah, I saw something in the paper where 1 million less people have insurance this year than in the previous year,
that's
nationwide.
Right. And Rick, do you remember the number of children that we are less? I think we're...
I thought it was 300,000.
Yeah.
This is the issue, is that when they're passing these pieces of legislation, they have no witnesses when they're in committees to speak to in support of these pieces of legislation when it comes to that. And we still have people that can't afford to pay their bills and pay for their medication. Once again, 2 years ago, you had to work in order to be on TennCare, but we don't want to take care of the working poor. And so when you say people are being lazy or not being effective in their own health care, we have people going to work every day and don't know what they're going to pay first. Can they pay their mortgage, or do they get this medicine that their child needs? And as a parent of a child with a disability, that's a struggle to have to deal with that. Because one thing about medication, it goes up.
Even just any children.
Right.
Yeah.
You're making $16 an hour, which is the median wage around here.
Absolutely, any child, but certainly a disabled child is going to, we know that the costs are going to be higher there and the need is going to be greater. And that specifically, block grants specifically are going to hurt those with disabilities and those in nursing homes. We know that for a fact.
Because of the cap.
Yes.
Yeah.
And these are talking points. I mean, they get talking points down from the national level to make it hot at the state. And there's not really, for instance, that piece of legislation is really an empty piece of legislation. It doesn't have any core or any substance. It's just a piece of legislation with actually no meat to it.
Right.
So you can even put it in operation. Even though it's passed, you cannot put it in operation at all. It has no body.
Right.
So that's what
it just says that the governor can talk to the president about a waiver.
It actually has
it's not
no
a plan.
substance at all. And a lot of people are missing that. It has no substance. So
yeah, and it's giving them the appearance that they have a plan, they have something they're working for, but that's just not the case at all.
And then sometimes we get into a situation, as we know, with vouchers where they have a plan, and now they're going to actually, it looks like they're going to enact it. They're going to take taxpayer money and give it to private schools.
Yeah, and to at a cost we're not really complete. They put this thing together so quickly the day when they were doing the conference committees, and they were trying that every time it'd come out different, they'd have to get a new budget, and that budget came out different every time, and the numbers are fuzzy, but we're pretty certain it's going to be well over 300 million. And they started out saying after 5 years it'd be 130 million. Mm-hmm. It's going to be well over 300 million. Now we know, if you read the report from the chalkboard group, that they have analyzed the bill, and now we know that rural kickback that was in there to make the rural folks okay with it, there's no guarantee to that. There is no guarantee to that. We're talking about the biggest piece of legislation that came out of Nashville this year,
right?
And it's under an FBI investigation.
I noticed that.
And the Republicans have the governor's office, they have the House and the Senate, and they can't make a victory lap after this session because their primary piece of legislation, the vouchers, aren't popular in the state, and they're under investigation. Then you've got the block grant bill that the Washington Post felt the need to do an editorial about how horrible it is. We passed the Katie Beckett waiver, and I think everybody was happy about that. But then you also have to be embarrassed that we're the 50th state to do it.
Well, it just kind of go, as far as ESAs in 6, 7 years, that will have proven to have failed, and they will repeal that. But the vendors that are in it to make money will have made millions of dollars and will not even be in the state. I guarantee you that in 6 to 7 years when that fails, people will have made so much money, because where private prisons was the moneymaker and has not worked, they're going into ESAs now. That same group is going into that to make money, and they'll be gone. And then we have so many things that are making national news, from how things are going with our leadership to FBI investigations. And what we fail to realize is Tennessee is trying to recruit. We did all these tax cuts for businesses, F&A, but who wants to move their company here when you're looking at sexism, racism,
and leadership?
In leadership. And so it looks like the old South to people. So we're trying to recruit families. Tennessee has an aging population because young people, this is a fact, young people get educated and they leave the state of Tennessee.
They move out.
We are an aging population. Nothing against seniors, you're wonderful. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying the young people leave.
You'll be one soon.
And I'm already there. So that's an issue when they look at these things that happen at a national level. The only thing that's taken away from my hugely negative position is that Alabama, that horrible bill that they just passed in their government.
Well, I think that it's also important to say that we're not guaranteed if it fails that they'll take it away, because we had K-12 Inc., and that was supposed to be a pilot program, 3 years. If it didn't do well, they have refunded it every year. We're still giving millions, and they're still at the bottom every single year when it comes to scores and grades, and we are still giving them money. So I don't trust that our government will stop it even after it's performing poorly. And this is our kids that we're talking about and their future.
Yes.
And I don't know of a state that has had vouchers and stopped them. But I also can tell you there is not a single state in the country who has vouchers where students with vouchers compared to their same peers in public schools are not doing better anywhere. Those with vouchers are not performing better. And that's just a fact that's backed up by research.
Well, you know, when I ran, I used to tell people I have never seen a study, and it's true to this day, I've never seen a study that showed that voucher schools were better than a well-run public school. And to this day, I think it's true. And if anybody out there is listening and has seen one, find me, Google me. I'm easy to find. Send it to me, and I'll change my opinion. But there's no proof at all of what they say.
And you have to make sure of where that research comes from, because people will
true.
argue that. And you also have to make sure that they're comparing not the kids that have been in private school their whole life, but just the students who are using the vouchers. And that's why I say it's so important to compare apples to apples.
That's correct.
It's quite simple. You can just go to their state websites and see the grades.
Yeah.
You know, a great one, and I don't know who all has seen this, but someone showed it to me. Andy Spears from Tennessee Ed Report does some great work on education reporting. And there's a chart on our own website that compares charter performance to public ed performance. Public ed performance is higher in every single category in their own graph. And they're still pursuing this charter school idea. So
for the sake of children, whereas they want to suppress anything like ACEs, that's helping our children that are dealing with PTSD because of their environment, anything that really helps our children and protects our children, help them grow, you can't get funding for. We have, in Knox County, we have over 4,000 grandparents that are parents. And it's hard for them to get funding and hot meals because most seniors are on fixed income. But when you try to pass any legislation or divert dollars towards helping these individuals, you can't do that. But you can put 50 million, 56 million in the budget for more armed officers in the schools.
Mm-hmm.
So it's if you're saying you're doing this for the sake of our children, for the care of our children, you're not really doing anything to benefit their growth, especially emotionally.
Well, they won't seem to look at community schools.
Well, and to
Community
speak to,
schools
that's
are a
what I
great
was just
program.
thinking when he said that. He's
Bob
talking about
Cronick.
ACEs, he's talking about mental health. Well, that's what community schools do. They put mental health support in the schools. They put doctors and dentists in the schools. That addresses the needs, the reason kids are doing poorly in schools. We know the reason that some communities do more poorly than others, and that's because they don't have the resource.
Right.
So you provide those resources to those schools and they thrive. Picking a kid up out of his neighborhood and dropping him down in another neighborhood does not fix anything. It doesn't change the services he needs because they don't have them at that private school. And this particular bill is completely outrageous because it gives your parents a $7,000 debit card, which most of the private schools in Knoxville you can't go to for that.
No.
So you've got to pay the rent, you've got to pay the other $8,000 plus, or depending on what school you go to. You've got to get transportation there. You've got to get uniforms.
Books.
They don't have free lunch. What is that child going to eat for breakfast and lunch? You know, this is not a solution. This is a way to pay for folks who are already attending private school. What you see in other states like Indiana and Wisconsin, 60% plus of the kids using vouchers never attended a public school. They've always gone to private school.
And then invest in the neighborhood. You want to pull the child out of the neighborhood, but you don't want to invest in the neighborhood. You don't want to look at any kind of infrastructure that you can bring jobs and job training and partnering with the schools and shaping these young people's future. A lot of these kids are just a broken window theory. They're looking at a lot of broken windows. You rather pull them out of that, just a few, but you don't want to make the investment in these particular neighborhoods. And that's an issue, especially within the inner city, that I have a problem with.
And the solutions, again, we have to go back to if all those folks had access to health care. If we raise the wage and people could earn a living wage and they could work one job instead of working 2 and 3 jobs to take more time with their children, you know, that is the way we solve these problems. Yes, we solve it by putting more resources in our public schools, but also making sure that people who work hard a 40-hour work week are earning a living wage and have access to the health care that they need. Makes all the difference in the world. That's what Michigan studied when they expanded Medicaid. They found that for lower income working folks, Their debt ratio went way down. Their credit rating went way up. They were able to get car loans, improve their skills, get better jobs, and it was a huge boost to Michigan's economy. They are paying the percentage that the federal government pays with no problem and more. They said they will be able to pay their 10% easy because of the huge boon it has been to the economy with raising those working people up instead of keeping them down.
Well, it expands your tax base. If you expand your tax base, you can put it back into the neighborhood. And not only that, you're creating more disposable income. You know, you have more disposable income, you're able to get more retail, and you're starting to revive these communities again. And that's not the kind of look that we're taking. We're looking at making individuals that already have money even richer.
The tax cuts for FedEx.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, we gave $70 million in tax cuts. The biggest one went to one single company, FedEx, and it was 21 million plus, I believe. And so this company is doing great. And I appreciate that they're here in Tennessee and that their business is here. But why are we giving tax breaks to massive corporations when we're not doing tax breaks for middle class and working families, and we're not doing it for our local small business who are starting up and trying to grow their business like a FedEx? You know, we need to help those folks, and the people who are doing well. You know, they'll say that the professional license was a big help. It's a help to a few of the regular middle class, working class folks, but a lot of that was giving lobbyists a break on paying their professional dues and you know, that sort of thing. Let's think about Tennessee's working families and those who are struggling and doing everything right and help lift them up into the middle class. We have folks falling out of the middle class, and that is not for a Tennessee economy or a U.S. economy.
No, it's not. Well, let's talk about the leadership. It's been interesting.
Go, Rick.
It changes by every 3 minutes via tweet, so you kind of have to wait and let that be updated. Is there something new literally?
It's been
every 5
a wild
minutes.
couple of weeks here.
It is. Feels like we're still in session.
Who can give a brief summary for people that aren't paying attention?
Well, I can say that we currently have a speaker who is under investigation for trying to put a young black activist in jail. You know, that is what they're actually looking into. Then, of course, today, speaking to Rick, talking about the tweets, we find out the special prosecutor that has been appointed to this has some serious issues of his own.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So, oh yeah, that's new today. And so
it's literally every 5 minutes.
It makes you it makes you question.
Right.
You know, can you trust that? But then you've also got a speaker that's hired ghost employees that are not in the legislature but being paid on the state payroll. That one also just changed shortly before I walked in here.
Heard he quit.
He's now quit. Well, of course he has, because that's not okay. I mean, I have friends that are literally calling this a state-run criminal enterprise.
I just saw him Monday when I was pulling into the building, coming out of the building. I was like, hey, that's that guy.
That's
There
that
he is.
From
The guy that we didn't know who he
I was
was
like, man, that's that
before.
guy. He just came out of the building, you know. And it's just crazy to have to deal with that. You know, the Black Caucus had like a 5.5-hour meeting
I read about that. Yeah.
with the speaker, and it
He
just
didn't convince anybody, did he?
Well, that was our third meeting. We had one initially after Kate Cothran, right before he resigned. We had one with Scott Gilmer when he took over. And all these meetings, I think in total, are probably like 12 hours total that we've had just trying to get some action plan answers.
Action plan.
Or something. I mean, what is the process? And so everybody's pretty much made a statement about his resignation. But you know, we were talking about before the show that I guess next week you'll kind of know where the numbers are for the Republicans on their request for resignation.
And they're going to have a closed meeting,
Closed
no press,
meeting, secret meeting.
off the Capitol, as I'm told.
Okay.
So, you know, it's really tough because we've got those racist texts, we've got those sexually explicit texts.
What about the eavesdropping?
We've got the eavesdropping, you know, the white noise machine. It's funny because I go back to a meeting I had in the Speaker's office, and I was going to ask him about why he wouldn't call on me when that time I held my
Yeah,
hand
sure.
up for 40 minutes on the heartbeat bill, and he refused to call on me.
Right.
He
Even though
also
the Constitution
refused.
says they're supposed to
He
be able to speak.
refused to hear my amendment as well.
Right.
And so I went to him to ask him why, and he literally told me it was retaliation for participating. He said for organizing the protest against Representative Byrd. I had nothing to do with organizing the protest against Representative Byrd. As a matter of fact, the women that are called Enough is Enough that do that, I never knew them until that I didn't go to the first one. The second one I went to, I wanted them to know that I supported what they were doing. And I went and sat in committee. I sat behind them. I didn't hold a sign. I didn't say a word. I was there as support for them, and I wanted them to know that. But you can find me sitting in an education committee any day of the week.
Right.
And I told him I was going to continue to sit in that education meeting. I was going to continue to quietly support those women, And he said that was why. I was kind of shocked he admitted it,
Yeah.
actually.
You know what struck me is he said in the paper that, well, practically every business has a white noise machine. I don't think I've ever seen a business that had a white noise machine.
I
Have
haven't
you?
either.
Well,
Why would you have one?
I knew people had them because of they felt like they were being recorded or eavesdropping. That goes back to like Legislative Plaza. I mean, that was always the rumor that you were.
Oh, I never heard that. When I was in Legislative Plaza, I
that
never
really
heard
struck
that
me that they were
rumor.
listening in on the committee meetings.
Well, your
That's not right.
offices. I
Well,
mean,
no, not committee meetings. They were listening into our caucus meetings.
I'm sorry,
Right,
caucus
yeah.
meetings. I
Committee
got that
meetings
wrong.
we all listen into
Yes,
because
of
we,
course. No, I meant caucus meetings.
Well,
Yeah.
in LP,
Yeah.
they would
That's just
cut
not
the green
acceptable.
light on when we were.
That's Watergate
Democrats.
stuff right there.
You could see when they were. You could see a green light go on whenever we were in there talking, and then you could see it go back off. When that green light was on, it was being recorded. So I mean, that was just
that's not right.
That's why I leave my TV on. If anybody's ever visited me, I always have my TV on. Just
You're a little paranoid yourself.
well, yeah.
It's not paranoia.
I mean, I leave
no,
my
I mean,
TV
that's so.
I do.
Even
I
paranoid's
can't
I'm
tell
serious.
you.
I
I
leave the
can't
TV
tell
on.
you how happy I was to hear Jeremy Faison come out and say it, and other people come out and
Right.
say it because
A lot
I
of Republicans,
knew.
yeah.
Actually, Jeremy Faison and I have the same little spy guy, and so I knew he was following
Same
me.
spy guy.
Yeah, the guy that follows you around and listens to your conversations and everything.
Really?
Yeah.
They have someone that goes around and follows you around.
Yeah,
And then reports
as a
back
matter
to
of fact, they
Casada?
set his cubicle right outside my office. That's where he's stationed. It's silliness, and I would never say it out loud to people, but now that the Republicans are saying it too, I feel like okay, now people won't think that I'm making stuff up, But
Yeah.
it's 100% true.
Casada sent a postcard out and to help Martin Daniel, who is one of his allies, when I ran, and I'll put it on my Facebook page tonight, and everybody can look at it and see it.
Yeah, it's outrageous.
We thought it was funny. I think it actually hurt me, but I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. It doesn't
just
matter.
dirty
It's all
politics.
dirty politics.
Mean. Mean is what it is.
Well, somebody asked me, what's the difference now and then when I was there before? And it is, the word I use is mean.
It's the meanness.
They are mean.
We can disagree, but we don't have to be mean with
I
each
just
other.
think they're very vicious. I mean,
Yes.
just
Yeah.
some of those.
Yes.
Those diatribes. I was doing a bill for Knoxville Zoo, which passed, and just because Nashville was attached to it, they hate Nashville. I mean, that bill had a rough time just because Nashville was attached to it. They wanted the same thing, and they were trying to kill it because Nashville was on it. And
Big
that's just,
city, huh?
They hate Nashville.
Well, they
Nashville.
hate cities run by Democratic leadership
Democrats,
for a
that's right,
lot,
that's right, yeah. That's true.
And there's some folks up there that always vote against alcohol bills, but that was more than just your typical alcohol
Yeah,
bill
Hey, I
issue.
pass a
I
few.
think.
I
Primary.
pass a few.
Yeah.
Well, listen, let's shift gears. We got about 5 minutes left. What about
Okay.
the future? What do we need to do next time? Or what do you think's possible to do?
I always say the same thing. Just register, despite the fact that they are trying to do voter suppression. Be more diligent about registering people to vote. I mean, you see what they're doing. They're not hiding it. That's okay. They're not stop you from registering people. Make sure, just double check it. Register people to vote in 2020 and make sure you're getting people out to the polls. Tennessee is still low in voter turnout. We have a city election this year. Turn out and vote. People are just starting to lose interest in getting out to vote, and next year's a really big year.
We need a record
2020.
turnout.
Yeah, you need a lot of people
We
to.
need a
I
record
think that's the
turnout.
biggest thing. People just showing up
Yeah.
to the polls and voting. We're really where we are because of lack of people voting. Let's remember Donald Trump, once again, ended up in office because 46% of Americans that could vote did not vote. And that's a problem.
And what we know, talking about the card they sent out of you, and then the multiple things that they sent on me and all the other candidates, it's about voter suppression because people get frustrated. They see all the ugly and they want to disengage.
They walk away.
You know, who wants to? Right now, with what the speaker, all the issues with the speakers, people just think it doesn't matter who I vote for. They're all, you know, it makes the appearance so ugly that they just don't want to get involved. I would hope that it would inspire them to say, we've got to do better, we've got to elect good folks. But a lot of people, it just makes them feel like, I just don't want to participate. But I can tell you, there is so much more participation than I've ever seen in my life because I'll get calls after running a bill in committee. I'll get calls statewide from people who watched me run that bill in committee.
Oh, good.
And so people are tuning in at home, they're tuning into floor sessions, they're tuning into committee sessions like I have never seen before. And you haven't done your first graduation yet?
No.
Okay, so I've done 2 graduations so far, and I cannot tell you how many teachers, principals came up to me and said, you know, thank you, we're still going to fight this. I will. And the thing I heard, the most was, I will never vote for Bill Lee again. And these are Republicans, you know, because the reality is most administrators and teachers, this is a Republican county. Most of the teachers are Republicans, but they are not having it, and they are not going to support these people that voted yes on vouchers. It's just not going to happen because, and every person that's attached to them, and I'd say teachers and all that they're connected to have one of the biggest voting blocks in the state when they get their allies on board.
Right, when they get activated.
Yeah. And boy, I mean, administrators who typically, they kind of lay low and try to stay out of the middle of that, they're the first to pop up. And I have to brag big time on Mike Reynolds, the principal at Central. One of the things he said at graduation was, you know, he was thanking his teachers, and he says that without great teachers, we don't have democracy.
It's true.
And he came up to me afterwards, he said, I believe that. And I said, well, you're right.
That's the truth.
It absolutely is.
Our public education system is worth fighting for.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, we got 1 minute left. You got any real quick? Anything, Rick?
I'll come back one day and speak about sports betting and getting that passed and making history to try to quell down. There's a lot of misinformation out there about that, and the intent and what it does. But just real quickly, Tennessee is the first non-gaming state that does sports betting now, online, interactive, and mobile only. The piece of legislation, 30-page document that I got out of my own brain, believe it or not from any nefarious individuals. Nobody gave it to me. I'm still a Democrat. Nobody gave me the bill. If they wanted it to pass.
Okay, we gotta wrap it up. We gotta wrap it up here. Thanks a lot for having us.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Again, I'm Greg Mackay. This is DTV. We really appreciate you watching. We need you to get involved. This year and next year coming up are some of the most important years in the future of our democracy. You need to get off in front of the TV and go out and do something. Register some voters. Talk to your neighbors and get involved in the party. Thank you for watching. Good night.